Hey guys, MetalJesus here, and I am at RePC in Tukwila with Chris. How's it going, dude?
Excellent. Happy to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me down here. Please tell me what this is.
This is a SEGA Dreamcast dev kit. We also have some prototype software we want to show you.
Dude, I am so excited for this. Let's take a look. All right, Chris, so I'm kind of curious, like, this just walked in the door and someone was looking to recycle it?
Yeah, they didn't even actually speak to us. They just left it in a box, put it on a cart, and then one of our sorters found it, recognized it.
Huh.
Oh yeah. We get a lot of stuff here at RePC, and it's important that we are able to identify the things that have either historical or retail value. Funny story is when I first heard about it from a coworker, I came flying out of the second story, and I mean, I made all kinds of noise. People thought I fell down the stairs, but I was so excited to see this thing in action.
Oh, I believe it. So what do we have back here? Because it's my understanding this is just a debug unit right here, right?
Correct. The whole thing together is the development kit.
Okay.
But this is just the debugger, which is a Dreamcast that has a couple of extra features onto it. This is a GD writer for actually using the proprietary Dreamcast discs. And a Sony PC.
I love that you did that, by the way, yeah.
Well, some things work better than others.
Yeah.
And this is a PC that actually is running a Japanese version of Windows 98, so we can actually use the software that came with the system.
Yeah, it's amazing that it came with discs, and I have no idea what's on there yet, so we're going to kind of dig in. And it came with a bunch of documentation, too. So again, this is all stuff we're going to check out when we dive a little deeper. You ready?
Ready?
All right, let's take a look.
To start off with, I was very curious to see what is actually inside of this thing. And since Chris is a computer tech and his job is to take apart old PCs and put them back together and keep them running, he seemed like the perfect guy to do this.
Very conventional power supply. This, inside this case, is your regular Dreamcast. Where it changes here in the back is where you get your serial, your MIDI out, your stereo RCA, your S-video component, and VGA, which we can actually change and make it straight RGB out. So it has an internal SCSI hard drive. This unit actually has every region's BIOS built into it, and there's a switch for us to control all that. And that's going to be the region rotary switch here. The slide switch here will actually allow us to either boot off of the hard drive or to boot off of the disk. And these toggles here control the different video modes. What's great about this is if, this broke down on you, let's say the main board went out, it's the retail unit. You can just replace it with that and get back up and running.
And then check out the back of this thing. There are a ton of ports and connectors that developers could use for their software.
These are actually SCSI ports. We have one here that went directly to that was dedicated to the GD writer. If we take off this terminator, you actually find this SCSI B, because you could chain these together with other SCSI devices. And then SCSI A would go out to your PC. The expansion, we have nothing that actually interconnects with it, and I haven't found anything. But again, expansion I/O could be a number of things, probably an additional hard drive. Your phone line import output, but you couldn't use, this was for development purposes. It wasn't actually a conventional phone line. And your two types of DB9 serial controllers so that you could use other equipment. Now on the actual Dreamcast side of it, we have your common stereo left and right phono jacks, your composite out, S-video, MIDI, so you could inject new music, try it out, see how it sounds, and then your analog RGB or common VGA connector.
All right, that's the hardware. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the software that came along with it.
This disc here is actually the software development kit disc. It's just a installer for Windows 98, and it gives you the Japanese version of the full development and control kit for the debugger. And the disc above it is actually a boot disc created by SEGA to allow you to quality test on a retail Dreamcast, you would put this disc in, it would say okay, and then you'd be able to put in one of these burn discs here and it would read it as if it was a pressed disc. What we have here are actually different builds and copies of the prototype software. The project name was Project Yuki. Yuki, as the company had created this image of a girl who had the Dreamcast camera and she took pictures and she wanted to edit them on her Dreamcast and then email them to friends. So this software actually allows you to use that camera and change the photos, add stamps, lettering, cropping, and then use an email client if you had a Dreamcast with your modem or broadband adapter, and then you could send it off to your friends. Okay, this is the actual PC running the software development kit. It required Japanese Windows 98. All right, and going to the SDK, we have actually a couple of programs. There's software for actually writing the GD-ROM. There's code viewing. A very simple one to run is called the debug appliance checker, and it's just going to make sure that we have everything connected correctly. It's actually going to reboot the system, and then we can test the features of the debug kit, and then we can also test the GD writer. You know, what's really nice is kind of behind the curtain, you can actually see when some of this stuff was created, like the firmware that was built in 1999. We have the test. The test is actually older than the firmware build that was on here. And next we can actually load up some software so you can actually see it executing on the development kit.
So what he's going to do here is use a retail disc, a Dreamcast game that you could have bought at the store, pop it in here, and then use the development software to analyze it in real time while it's running.
It's actually showing running in progress now. It'll show you that it's the actual Dreamcast on the SCSI host. You can see actual things running. It'll tell you what's actually being executed on this system right now, and it's just running Smash Pack Volume 1. So we can hit start. Let's say I was actually in the process of testing this, and I needed to, it's running fine, but I want to check something. I can go over here to execution and then hit stop. And the software stops running. It's in a halted state. But I can see where everything was while I was doing it. And then I can go back into debug, execution. Let's say I've seen something, I've made my change. I can hit run again, and it goes back and it starts running. Now this is just a demo, obviously, but this is the kind of thing you would see during an actual debugging process. What you're gonna get with your SDK is you're gonna have CD-Craft for controlling the GD writer, your Codescape, which was actually watching the code execute and how it's actually running through the system itself. Code Warrior is so you can go in and rewrite or address certain issues in memory. The DA checker is just to make sure everything's working right with this device. The DB Flash is for actually flashing new firmware on that. We kind of didn't want to mess with that because there is no technical support for this anymore. GD Workshop is so that you can kind of author the disk before you write it. IP Maker is actually kind of cool. This actually lets you create the images that you would actually push to this unit if you didn't want to write a disk for testing. So one of the cool things about having this dev box like this is that I can do all my programming and then push to the hard drive that's inside of this thing and boot off of that instead of actually having to use disks, because disks get expensive after a while.
The company that owned this development kit was working on photo editing software for the Japanese market. According to the documents, it was designed to take advantage of a digital camera add-on for the Dreamcast, as well as integrate with an email client. And that kind of makes sense because they were working with Adobe, which is also in the Seattle area.
Okay, this is actually the prototype software booting up. This is the Yuki build 145.2. This is, you see, this is very rough. This is very early work. PhotoFun was the editing program that they were developing, and then the mail app was so you could use your modem to actually send things to your friends. This didn't come out in the US. It did get bundled with another program in Japan called Visual Park, which we do have a pre-release copy of. This was actually produced by a company called Digital Intelligence here in the area. They worked in conjunction with Adobe to produce this software for the Japanese market because they were going to get that camera. It's fascinating to see the backside of the production, not just the coding and the testing, but to actually see the pitch meeting materials that are in here, the corrections that were made by SEGA of Japan going, no, this needs to be this way, this needs to go here, that character does not mean that, put this character in its place. So this is just a demonstration of the different types of frames that you could have actually used at the time. Somebody with a lot more Japanese skill could probably get a lot farther than I can.
And so that's a look at the development software that was included when somebody dropped this off. And as you can see, that with this hardware and software, you could pretty much start developing a brand new Dreamcast game today. But that's not all. They also included a bunch of design documents and things that were used for testing as well as marketing materials.
Yeah, they covered everything. What's fascinating about it is that actually has part of a pitch in it. And it breaks down everything like sales numbers, what they're looking to do, how the actual first time use scenario where we get the name Yuki.
It was pretty interesting looking at this because it was basically everything you would need to pitch the idea of a game or app, as well as the UI design, the flow of the application, what your goals with it would be, who the audience would be, as well as how you would market to them.
Oh, that's cool.
And it included behind the scenes information about what Sega thought about the Dreamcast and how well it would sell both in Japan and North America.
And the camera itself.
I love all these hand drawings. That's pretty cool.
However, I quickly realized that there's a lot of personal information in these documents, and so I'm not going to zoom in and show a lot of detail because there is a lot of people's full names, phone numbers, addresses, things like that. It was really cool to dig through these because it's not just information about this specific app and this company, but really the Dreamcast as a whole. It was pretty cool.
All right, dude, this is awesome, but what are your plans with it?
Actually, this is it. It's on display here at RePC in Tukwila. It's a museum piece, so we have it here with a functioning Dreamcast so people can come in and, play around with the thing.
That's right. It's part of their museum that they have at every location. So this one actually has a small little museum in the front, and people get to come over and check it out, and you guys are going to preserve it for hopefully all time. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So you guys should definitely check out RePC if you are in the Seattle area. I'll put a link to their website down below. And as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching my channel. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.